Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So all of the stories covered in today's video will be tied together under the common themes of ignorance and misinformation. And we're going to jump right into it. Our first story involves Vshojo's kson, who is currently being attacked by some ignorant Twitter users due to the tweet you're looking at right now. So in this tweet where she's promoting a YouTube short with Nazana, she uses this symbol in the description of the tweets, which many people have falsely associated with the Hakenkreuz, which is the Nazi swastika. Now, this is something that we have dealt with before. Only a few weeks ago, we talked about this tweet where a Twitter user was angry about a Japanese map that was marking Buddhist temples with a symbol, a swastika symbol, and in their eyes, this was practically a map of Nazi Germany. Now, of course, that ignorance is once again reflected in this whole situation where kson had to immediately quote retweet that and provide an explanation saying, if anyone thinks this symbol represents something wrong, take a close look. It's not. This means manji in Japan. Now, again, just like the previous video, I will explain the differences here the best I can. This on the left is the manji symbol. It is something associated with Buddhist temples. It is a symbol of peace and good luck, and it is one of many swastika symbols that are common in Southeast Asia that all have very positive connotations to them, and they've existed for hundreds, if not thousands of years in some cases. On the right, you have the Hakenkreuz, which is the Nazi swastika, which of course people associate with hate, bigotry, genocide, among other hateful rhetoric, right? And depending on where you live, your perception of what a swastika represents is probably going to be affected. And whether that's right or wrong, that's just the reality. So a lot of ignorant Twitter users, especially Western Twitter users, based on their education or whatever, or lack of education, will see a swastika like the manji symbol and immediately associate it with Nazi Germany. Now, you can trust me on that. I'm called a Nazi every single day on Twitter, so clearly I must know what I'm talking about with the background of that. But nonetheless, that didn't stop anyone from making ignorant comments in the replies to all of these tweets, like this user saying, "Guess this is what Twitter is now. Just being able to casually post Nazi symbols and not give a care. Yikes." Obviously, a very ignorant comment from someone probably from the West who thinks the entire world revolves around them. But I think it's comments like these that are probably the most important to discuss. It says, if possible, refrain from using that symbol because people are going to perceive wrong. Never underestimate the interweb's boss. So here's the thing. Twitter loves using the term cultural appropriation. Okay, we see it used every single day to attack people. It is something that 99% of the time, it is completely unfounded and being used inappropriately, and it's just an excuse to attack people on the internet and feel like you're the right one in the situation. I mean, an example being like a couple weeks ago, we talked about the concept of Western English speakers using anime characters as their VTuber model is culturally appropriating Japanese culture. That's obviously insane, but this example we're looking at now, this whole situation with manji and the Hakenkreuz, that is an actual historical example of a symbol being appropriated in a negative way by another culture. That impact has had a lasting effect until present day, where you had a symbol, the swastika symbol from Southeast Asia, used in many different contexts that had positive meaning. It was stolen by the Nazis, and now people, especially in the West, they have this negative connotation to swastikas in general because of their only exposure being to Nazi Germany when it comes to swastika imagery. And that is something that people from Southeast Asia are still dealing with because now you post innocent swastika imagery onto Twitter and you're getting attacked and associated with Nazi Germany. And that's obviously a problem. And that's an example of an innocent symbol being hijacked by another culture. And the issue here is not to refrain from using this swastika imagery. That is not what the original users of this symbol should do. Instead, like Twitter always says they will do, you should be able to educate people who only associate the swastika imagery with the Hakenkreuz. Like, that is what you're supposed to do. Instead of telling the original users who have been using symbols like the manji for hundreds of years to tell them, hey, cut it out because people might misunderstand your use. That's not fair at all. And it's reflected in other comments and replies. Like, my take on similar symbols has always been, if someone raised in East or South Asia uses it, then assume the best, unless you can tell it's bad based on context or its diagonal shape. It's best to avoid using it on the internet if you have a big Western audience, though, which is completely unfair. So we're going to only allow people to use the symbol if they're from particular regions, and then you have to look at the context. I think the funniest thing about this is that Kson is an American. She was born in the US. And of course, she has her own influence of Japan in her life that's very strong, obviously. But that doesn't change the fact that she is an American. And I think that's the irony of this situation, because if people expanded their horizons here, they would understand that this swastika imagery is not only relating to Nazi Germany. And I guess Kason's a good example. You can blame the American education system all you want, but someone who goes out and experiences other cultures like Kson does, it opens up your worldview a little bit and makes you more knowledgeable about stuff like what we're talking about in today's video. And we'll look at one more comment before we'll move on. Again, very similar, saying, look, I agree, it's important to look at the cultural context in which symbols are being applied, but you had to know it would be seen as a swastika, and you should have at least given a brief explanation as to why you're posting it in the first post. Yes, before you use innocent imagery like the manji, you have to give an explanation to your viewers. It's just a completely ridiculous standard, and it makes, basically, it's a form of victim blaming in this case. Like, a symbol gets hijacked, and now anytime you use it, you have to give an explanation to outsiders who are largely ignorant of what it means in the first place. But yeah, I guess this should serve as a learning moment. I really hope moments like these can be learning moments for Twitter users to think a little bit outside the box and realize they're not the main character in the world, and that their perception of things is not always accurate. I mean, besides, right off the bat, these symbols aren't even, the same. They're different rotations of the swastika imagery. But the fact that they're so easily confused is sad, and that people like Kson have to give an explanation for using an innocent piece of imagery like the manji. It's unfortunate, but again, I hope it's a learning lesson for people. Now, we're going to change gears here. We're going to go completely different. Following the same ignorance and misinformation cue that we've been focusing on for this video, the Twitter freaks have claimed another character. This time it is Samus Aran from the Metroid franchise. Apparently, she is now canonically a transgender woman. Media representation matters, apparently. Well, apparently your headcanon matters more than reality, because this is absolutely crazy. Now, of course, there is hidden replies filled with people proving this wrong, and there's a lot of quote retweets, nearly 1,000, calling out how insane and how this is straight up misinformation. But this tweet still has 42,000 likes, saying that Samus is trans. And it's just not true. The only thing that even comes remotely close to this topic in terms of anything canon to this franchise was an interview from way back in the day where the creator of Metroid Prime came out and said, when asked, the likelihood of this game coming to the PlayStation 2 was as likely as Samus being transgender. That is the closest thing to proof, and it's literally making a joke about it. So yeah, the usual suspects have come out to say that she is trans this whole time, and that you're all just ignorant and stupid for thinking otherwise. And it's baffling. It's mind-boggling, to say the least, and just goes to show you how easy it is to spread misinformation. As long as it fits people's agendas, they will accept it. I mean, until they find out that quote, I'm sure they might change their tune a little bit. They'll probably call that person transphobic for their comments about that. But hey, it's Twitter, comes with the territory. But we're going to end on a completely different route. Now, this is funny. So a lot of people go out and they're like, they'll say, Rev, oh, you and all the people watching your video, you're just a bunch of transphobes. You don't want to see a trans character and it makes you upset and angry. You don't like that. No, it's different because you have a situation where a character has not been trans at any point, and all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork today to say, actually, Samus has been trans all along with no proof. People find that annoying because it's based on misinformation. However, you have people like this coming out trying to claim that Poison from the Street Fighter franchise is a post-op trans woman. Now, the difference between these last tweets is this one has virtually nobody angry about the reality of this fact. And I will go into as to why in a second, but basically this person comes out and says, if any dudes who are Street Fighter fans ever thought this chick was hot, I got some news for ya. And then in highlighted, they said right here from the Google search saying in North America, Poison is officially a post-op transsexual woman. So it's a very odd tweet to try to call people gay for liking this character. Meanwhile, you're posting like the hottest imagery possible for this character. But nonetheless, to explain how this happened, back in the early 2000s as the Street Fighter games were going out to North American audiences, the producer of the franchise was worried that feminists in the United States in the early 2000s would try to cancel this game because if Poison was a woman, her being hit and punched and kicked as a result of the game, it would be offensive and they would try to cancel it, right? Because women can't get hit, apparently. And even in video games. So his way of getting around this was to say that Poison was a new half, which is a Japanese slang for trans. And in this case, a post-op transsexual woman. And this was actually something included in the early 2000s art books and related products that came out in North America. And in following years, they were asked over and over again about Poison's gender. And the producer would still say, I think it could be a boy, could be a girl. It's really up to the viewer to decide which gender Poison is. And I bring all of this up to contrast it with the Samus situation because people are angry because the Samus one is coming out of thin air, right, with no proof. And Poison, on the other hand, has about 15 years of the producer saying it's up in the air and they could be trans, could be male, could be female, could be anything in between. It's up to you to decide. So, yes, this might catch people in Japan by surprise because this is a North American localization thing. And whether you agree with that or not, that's not the point. The point is, for 15 years, Western users of this franchise have had one clear narrative pushed on them with this character, and that basically it can be whatever you want, including a trans woman. And people have just accepted that. I mean, you go look at Rule 34 art of Poison. It'll be quite diverse, okay? And I say all this because if you look at the replies and quote retweets to this, you have people all across the spectrum basically saying, we do not care, in response to this tweet that is trying to do a hey, gotcha with this information, when in reality people were either already aware of this stuff or they simply didn't care. And that is the point. The contrast between these last two stories is that this is something that is a logical conclusion North American users of this franchise could come to, as opposed to the last story where it's all just headcanon. But that is going to do it for this video. That was a lot of going around on various topics here. I know it was a lot, and it's a lot of controversial topics as well. So YouTube, please don't smite me for this video. But yeah, I appreciate the watch, guys. Please share all of your thoughts about these various topics in the comment section down below. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.